Congressman Hudson, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Sean.
So let's just start with the lay of the land. 435 seats in the House of Representatives. You guys have a huge 4-seat majority. Talk to me about what the lay of the land politically looks like.
Well, thanks to redistricting, both parties have gotten really good at drawing very safe seats for themselves. Our battlefield is really small. I mean, out of 435 seats, there are only 35 seats that were won by 5% or less. So very few competitive seats left, very small battlefield. We're not going to ever see these sweeping changes in Congress again where you see 20, 30 seat changes. I like to say every single one of these races is going to be a knife fight in a dark alley. They're all going to be close. We're going to be fighting every step of the way to grow this majority.
When you, as the chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee, I'm sure you get, I don't know if the right word is pitched, candidates all the time. This guy in Minnesota 4 is amazing, and I'm just making up Minnesota 4, California 61, whatever it is. When you evaluate a candidate and somebody says, Maxine Waters has been horrible for California, I'm going to run against her, what are the criteria that you look at to determine whether or not you guys want to get involved in a race?
Well, the most important thing, Sean, is candidate quality. That's something I've learned watching Tom Emmer in this job and Kevin McCarthy in the past. When they go out and recruit the best candidates who have a compelling life story, who really fit their district, we can win almost anywhere. And so number one is you got to have candidate quality. But number two, you got to have a realistic shot at winning the seat. I don't have unlimited resources. We've done a good job of fundraising, but we've got to be very careful on how we spend those dollars. And so I'm not going to spend money in a place I don't think we can win. So what is it? So let's walk through that, because I get asked about this all the time, and I think it's important that they hear it from you. I want to run against Maxine Waters in California, or I want to run against Nancy Pelosi in San Francisco, and I come to you and I say, listen, I was in Afghanistan. I've got 2 Bronze Stars. I've saved 18 kittens from a fire. I've run a small business that makes a lot. Wow, that's a really compelling story. What is it that I have to show you that says I want the national party to look at me, to invest in me, to promote me? Well, we're going to look at the data, and Maxine Waters' seat is out of reach. I don't care who the candidate is, and so we're going to be realistic about our chances of winning the seat. We're going to look at historic numbers. We're going to look at trends. But if this happens, you get really great American people, patriots with great stories that want to run. And I often suggest they look at the state legislature or county commission seat.
Okay. So somebody comes to you and the data is not good. How much of a factor is money? How much is it? I've got a great story. This is a D+6 district, let's say. But what is it that you're going to tell me if I come to you and I say, hey, look, I think we can win this seat. It's Democrats are favored by 6 points, but I've got a great story. I think the incumbent has been out of touch maybe, or they're on the wrong side of some key issues. What do I need to show you at this point mechanically, logistically, for you to take a look at me?
Well, we'll look at each seat and look at the cost of that media market and what we think a campaign will cost. And we'll have a realistic conversation with that candidate about how much money we think they need to raise to be competitive. And, we have those serious conversations all the time. There are a number of seats out there that we think we can win if we get the right candidate. So we get the right candidate, we check the box. Then we tell that candidate, you've got to go out and demonstrate that you can raise funds. And if they do, if they are successful, then we'll move to the next step. If they aren't able to raise money to be a serious candidate, to tell their story, then we'll go look elsewhere.
And so is there a barrier to entry that needs to exist? Hey, you need to raise 200,000 or 500,000 or $1 million. Like, what is it that says I'm a serious candidate?
Well, again, it varies by district. If you're running for a district in downtown LA or New York media market, the cost for an advertisement there are so expensive that those numbers are really high. But there's other parts of the country where, those dollars will go a lot further in advertising. So we really just kind of go case by case and predict what we think that candidate needs to raise to be competitive. And, of course, we've got ways to help them raise money, ways to direct money to them. But if we don't have a candidate who's willing to do the work, then we'll go look elsewhere.
But is there a bare minimum that you say, hey, if you can't
I don't know.
raise 150, 200 grand, you're not a serious candidate?
Something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
it depends on the seat, but I mean, it really does come down to, are you willing to do the work? When I was a first time candidate, I was making phone calls in the first few months. I was calling 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week. I was on the phone calling people, asking for their support. It's hard work, and it's kind of, I love playing golf. It's kind of like golf. You lose more than you win in golf, and you just got to have that something inside you that you believe enough in what you're doing, that you care enough about this country, that you're willing to do that hard work. And so that's really what I'm looking for, is candidates who are willing to do the hard work, do the things that are necessary, so they can be successful. And those are the kind of people we want to partner with.
So you've got the Republican National Committee, and then obviously you're the chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee. What's the difference between the two committees? Like, what do you do and what do they do?
Great question. The RNC is really focused on turning out the vote, kind of building that party infrastructure out there, so that we register voters, turn voters out, drive folks to absentee vote if they're not going to be there on election day, and so it's kind of the electioneering. And then also under Chairman Whatley, they're very focused on ballot integrity and making sure that we've got systems in place to protect our vote. So that's the RNC. My job is go out and recruit the best candidates possible and go pick up as many House seats as we can possibly pick up.
When you recruit candidates, is it Richard Hudson looking in Alabama too and saying, I've heard about these 5 people, and then there's an interview process? Do people bring them to you? How does that work? Is it a mix of that, or do you guys go out there and search Facebook or something like that?
Well, it's a very sophisticated process. We have a committee that focuses on recruitment. I appoint the chair of that committee, and this Congress is Kat Kamek from California, and she and her committee work with our staff. So we have political staff that's divided up regionally, and our regional political director's job is to know these communities, know these districts, get to know the local county party, state party, elected officials, the community, and then this group of members works with that staff to generate leads, reach out to folks. When we've got a really good candidate, somebody that we think ought to be running for Congress, then in a lot of cases I'll make that phone call. In some cases I'll go out and visit them personally, and so it's really a team effort. But and I'll be honest, this cycle we had trouble recruiting early on. We didn't have people coming out of the woodwork or wanting to run for Congress, and so we had to work hard to go identify. You start by saying what are our target districts, where are the places we want to be competing, and then you go out and identify who's the best candidate to run from this community. And because it was harder, and because we actually had to go out and beat the bushes and really look for, who are the leaders, the business leaders, the local elected officials, who are the folks in that community that we think would be strong candidates, and then we had to go out and convince them to run. And that was harder, but the net result was we got really good candidates, and we didn't have as many primaries, because once we got that person to agree to run, we stopped recruiting. And so we had very few competitive primaries this time in our target races, and I'm really proud of the quality of candidates we put on the field.
So what's that conversation like? You identify somebody that they've a successful business person, maybe they served in the military, and you call them and say, hey, it's Richard Hudson, the chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee. We think you should run for Congress, and here's why.
So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I used to be a waiter, helped pay my way through college as a waiter. And, you walk up to a table of strangers and you got to immediately make a connection with them and establish a rapport. It's the same kind of skills. I mean, when you're calling someone that is very accomplished, probably has a family, probably has a pretty good life, and I want to convince them to take less pay for longer hours. It's a tough, but you appeal to their patriotism. You talk to them about the situation now where we've got a Democrat Party controlling the Senate and the White House, and a very slim majority in the House. And the country's going in the wrong direction. And we just talk about the problems that we need to solve, and we need people like you And we talk about their background and why that makes them uniquely qualified, why we think they can win. We talk about some of the things we can do to help them become effective candidates. And, you just kind of see where the conversation goes.
So last couple cycles, I know you guys have recruited and been very successful with veterans, women, et cetera, right? I got to meet a gentleman. I spoke to the Maine Republican Party probably 2 months ago now. I met the candidate there in Maine's 2nd Congressional District, Austin Thoreau. He's a former NASCAR driver. Talk to me a little bit about some of the top tier candidates that you have this cycle in terms of their background and what they're bringing to the table.
Absolutely. So there are 5 districts that Donald Trump carried that a Democrat was elected to Congress, and one of those being Maine too. That's one of our top targets in the country. The Democrat there, Jared Golden, he's one of these guys who, he has a tattoo. He served in the military. He drives a truck when he's home. He talks the talk, but then he comes to Washington and votes 85% with AOC and 90% with Joe Biden. He's one way at home and he's one way in Washington, and he gets away with it. What we needed was someone who had deep ties to the community there, who could challenge him. And we found that in Austin Terrio. He's, as you say, he's a former NASCAR driver. He's a great guy. He's in his first term as a state legislator. He has deep family roots, multi-generational Maine family. And so he is the exact profile we were looking for. The first time I sat down with him, I said, Austin, you and I have so much in common. You're a NASCAR driver. I always wanted to be a NASCAR driver. I mean, we're basically the same person. And he laughed at me, but he's a great candidate, and I believe he's the right candidate to beat Jared Golden. And this cycle, Jared Golden made a big mistake. He came out for gun control, which is very unpopular in Maine. The people in Maine understand the importance of the Second Amendment, and so I think we've got the right candidate, and I think the incumbent has really slipped up and taken a very unpopular position.
I was so shocked, Richard. I was up there doing this event, and these folks were talking to me about Poland's view on guns, and I was like, aren't I in Maine? And they're like, dude, you have no idea how much we value our Second Amendment here. And it was a shocking, I as a New Englander, I didn't realize how big of an issue that was in Maine, but you're absolutely right. I mean, that issue cuts through big up there. And I have a feeling that's going to be a big issue in the campaign, if I'm not mistaken.
I agree.
So who else? I mean, give me another example of one of the other. You mentioned the 5 districts. Who are one or two of the other candidates that you guys have in those Trump districts that Biden carried?
Well, as you work your way across the map, down in Pennsylvania 8, the incumbent there, Cartwright, again, another one of these guys who seems to be one thing at home, but then votes very differently in Washington and has gotten away with it. And again, our formula there is we wanted someone with deep ties to the district. And we found that in Rob Bresnahan. Rob Bresnahan is a business owner who grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania. His family's got deep roots. They had a manufacturing business. And when he was ready to go off to college, his grandparents came to him and said, look, we're in the Great Recession where our business is struggling. We want you to go to a local college and come work in the business as the CFO. And then when you graduate, we want you to take over the company. And that's what he did. And so he went to work right out of high school, helping run this manufacturing company. It's a union shop. And he grew this company, very successful. And so, and he's very involved in his community. He is a great candidate and is doing really well. So we think, again, we've got the right fit there to pick up that Trump district. As you move further east, up in Ohio, the Cleveland area, Ohio 9, Marcy Kaptur has been an incumbent for over 40 years. She is out of touch. She's rarely seen at home, and she's got a bad voting record. And we have a state legislator named Derek Marin, who we're really excited about. We think we've got a great chance to pick up that seat. Then as you go further to the west, out in Washington State, Marie Perez is another one of these Democrats that tries to have it both ways on a lot of issues, but unfortunately she's got a record, and so we're gonna educate the people about that record. Right now there's a primary, so we'll see. Actually, this week we'll see who our nominee is, but we've got 2 really strong candidates. I think either one we can pick up that seat. And then the fifth seat is Alaska. It's the most Republican district held by a Democrat. The 2 years ago, we had two very vocal, very high-profile Republicans running that didn't get along, and they instituted ranked choice voting. And too many Republicans, because of the bad blood between the two camps, didn't pick the other Republican as their second choice. And so Mary Peltola was able to sneak through and win that seat. But we have the sitting Lieutenant Governor, Nancy Dahlstrom, as our candidate. And Nancy is fantastic. She's got the full support of the governor. And we believe that the people of Alaska are going to reject the Democrat who has really voted against the interest of Alaska on a number of issues, including energy. And so again, we feel really good about that pickup.
So when you recruit these guys and you guys raise tens of millions of dollars, what is it that the NRCC does for them with this money? What is it that you spend all the money that you raise on?
Well, my focus this election has been on a couple of things. Number one is we want to make sure our candidates have enough resources to tell their story. What we learned, I think, from 2 years ago is we had a lot of seats we thought we were going to pick up. There was a lot of talk about a red wave, but there were probably 8 or 10 seats that we lost that we should have won, that we were tied going into Election Day. But I think the biggest factor there in these seats is we got outspent 7-1, 9-1, 10-1 in candidate dollars. We had a lot of resources on the air defining these Democrats, but our candidates didn't have the resources to tell their story. And so we've really focused on driving hard dollars to our campaigns. The other thing that we're focusing on is building really strong ground games around these candidates. I think over the years, nationally, Republicans have gotten a little lazy when it comes to get out the vote and the electioneering, the really tough work on the ground. And so we've set aside a significant amount of resources. We've already opened 35 field offices, we're calling battle stations, in these target districts. So we've had people on the ground, in some cases a year now, working hand in glove with those campaigns to make sure we're registering voters, we're targeting voters to turn out, that we're getting voters out early, make sure that we're not being outworked on the ground. And places where ballot harvesting is illegal, we're going to be better at ballot harvesting than the Democrats.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.